Hey everybody, don't forget that all of the information you're looking for about GrowLeader can be found by a quick visit over to GrowLeader.com. There you'll find information about upcoming events like our one-day regional conferences in the fall. Get ready for those. We're excited about them. You can also access completely free resources for your church, and you'll learn how you can be a part of our monthly mentoring calls with Pastor Chris Hodges. GrowLeader.com is also the place where you can find all of the show notes for everything you're about to hear in the episode today. Now, before we get started, we want to say a big thank you to the partners that help make the GrowLeader podcast happen. The first is the Wesleyan Investment Foundation. For over 80 years, WIF has been helping churches and church planners with their borrowing and investing needs. Now, maybe you're a pastor dreaming about how you're going to fund a brand new building project or other growth opportunity, or you might be at a place where you're trying to decide how to wisely invest and steward the resources you currently have. We really think WIF can help you, and you can learn more about them at wifonline.com. We also want to say thank you to Great American Family. Great American Family is America's premier TV destination for high quality, completely family safe programming. Great American Family is part of the Great American Media portfolio of brands and is carried through all major cable providers. To learn more about where you can get their content, go to greatamericanfamily.com. And finally, we want to say a big thank you to Compassion International. Compassion International has been working to serve the world's most vulnerable children in the name of Jesus for over 70 years. They've helped over 2.2 million children, and they reach and serve every child and family through the power of the local church. To learn more about how your church can be a part of what Compassion International is doing, go to compassion.com. Well, welcome everyone to the Grow Leader podcast, where we grow leaders that grow churches by helping them reach their full potential. My name's Matt, and with me as always is the one and only Pastor Chris Hodges, PC.
How you doing, Matt?
I'm great. Coming off, I think church at large, the capital C church, we're all kind of in the same place right now. It's been an amazing start to the year and working up to Super Bowl Sunday of church, which is Easter Sunday, and it was fantastic here.
Man, and everywhere, honestly, I call them some of my spiritual sons and daughters and some of the people that we're in the network and family with that have given me some of the greatest reports.
It's great.
Of the largest attendances they've had ever, and more people finding Christ than ever. And so, again, we've said it pretty much every episode this year. I think the first drops of revival are falling. In fact, we might even be in it. There definitely is spiritual hunger right now in America, and it's so refreshing.
It's an exciting time of year. What I love about this time of year, I think that, we've all been, Easter's awesome. We love every bit of it. Even great things can make you tired, can kind of wear you out a little bit. And we've all worked so much on what we're doing as far as the service goes and taking care of people. I love this time of year because now we get a chance to work on our staff culture and ourselves as leaders. And I actually requested this topic today. So we were talking about what to talk about today.
Yeah, you did. And it's important for everybody to hear that really your schedule doesn't operate evenly across 12 months. And so you've got to see it as in huge spurts of energy and seasons of growth and seasons of really maybe extra hours, so to speak, and then where you can dial it back a little bit and recover. I think it's not healthy to expect the hours, the days, the weeks, the months to all look the same. But if you can identify what those seasons of bursts are and importance, and then everybody go all in, and then have these times where, for us, we have this season of staff retreats. We have them twice a year, where we have really almost 2 days of just everybody on team refocusing, refreshing, rewarding some of the people who really hit it out of the park for us, having some fun. I bring in speakers, I bring in entertainment. We have great food. Oftentimes we have gifts, and that's what we want to talk about today.
And there's a symmetry with what we do as a staff team that we also do with our dream team, which is what we call our volunteers. And so we do that at a different time of year, though. So we have a dream team party in February around the anniversary of our church. And in the fall, we have team night. That's for the dream team, for the people that are helping serve to make church happen. But then we move the staff part of that completely out of those seasons so we can focus on all getting better as a staff team.
Yeah, and it's one of the most asked questions that we have at Grow Leader are about teams. And we were talking about this before we started the podcast. I get this question all the time, and it actually offends me. And that a lot of pastors ask me, how much of what you do as a church do you require the staff to do? And they're expecting me to, say, do you make your staff members tithe? Do you make them lead small groups? Do you make them attend church? I'm like, well, if I have to sell my staff that I pay into the vision of our house, they probably shouldn't be on staff. And so I think it's a bad question.
And I think as someone who's worked in other organizations, long time ago, one of the things I loved about you from day one, you were never going to ask us to do anything you weren't doing yourself.
Exactly.
And so that could be where some of the friction starts. If you're asking them to do stuff that you're not doing yourself, there's going to be a problem in that order.
Well, I even had a pastor friend text me right before Easter, and they said, "How many services are you preaching live?" And my response was, "Well, all of them." And he goes, "You mean to tell me you're going to attend every one of the Easter services?" I said, "But I love my job.
Yeah.
This is not something I have to do. I mean, I actually enjoy church." And he laughed. He goes, "You're a rare leader." And I don't think I am. Honestly, I think that the fact that we get paid to do what everybody else is doing because they love God and love church, it's just beyond me. So we do want to talk a little bit today about team culture and some of the things we've learned over the years, because about these staff retreats, because we get asked this question so much. So to be clear, we have twice a year, we have an all-staff gathering. So we have all staff every month, but an extended version of these in May, and then we do it. May is really the retreat, if you will.
Right.
We also meet again in December. Now, I know that's not a break season. That's right before another really Super Bowl weekend, and that is Christmas. But December, so we can look back at the previous year and kind of head into the new year with some fresh energy and fresh focus.
And it's also the day of our staff Christmas party. It's still a celebration, whole lot of fun there, just so we can get a chance to hang out and be together. And there's an element of this that happens every single month. You mentioned that in our staff meetings. What I love about what we get to do coming up, in fact, as you're listening to the podcast right now, we're in staff retreat week. So we're getting ready to do this. I love that this is, if you have a staff of 3 people, if you're a very small church, which we love churches that are growing churches no matter what size you are, or you're at a staff level that we are, which is not 3 people on staff. There is a way for you to plug in and do this and set time aside for you to really invest in your staff team.
So this is a retreat, and I'll tell you where we are today, but I'll tell the audience where we were when we first started. But today it is a 2-day event where I bring in guest speakers, people who can invest in them, and I brought in great speakers to pour into our team. But we get buses, and we've played top golf together. We've been to the Birmingham Civil Rights Museum, spent a day there, just anything I can to pour into them. We've had great food. We actually had, I think it was last year, took everybody back to Mountain Brook High School where our church began.
Which is key.
Had it set up like it was on that very first Sunday. I led the worship just like I did on that first Sunday, and we had kind of a take them all back moment. So we've done a lot of things. And then in the years, I would say, if we could step back 5 to 7 years, Matt, we were small enough of a staff where we could actually go out of town, rent hotels.
Right.
And we had hotel rooms, played golf, had all this great event. Before that, though, I'd rent small spaces. I think it's good to be off property if you can. We can't anymore, but it's good to be off property. And then we would have times of team building exercises, games, those trust falls, whatever type of stuff, the things that you do when you're trying to build teams. All that to say is it'd be very important for there to be an annual event, regardless of the size of the church. This is what families should do, and kind of recalibrate, come back. And I want to hit some of the themes that are in ours, and I want to hit these themes, and we're going to get very practical at the end. But there are several themes that should be hit regardless of the size or the sessions that you're going to have that I'm going to do in some version every time. And the first is who we are. Who are we and what do we do? And years ago, we actually did an exercise with a company who does it for like Toyota and all these, I think they did it for Disney, where they actually help brand companies. We actually went through a branding exercise, and I'm just going to read where our brand came out to give you an example for everybody that's listening. But our purpose was that we make a church attractive by delivering the gospel in a refreshing way. And our offer is that we offer a relationship with God instead of religion, which leads people to higher heights so that living for God is no longer an obligation, it's a desire. Now, for all of you who are saying, slow down, I was going to write that down. We'll have all this in the show notes, but I'll read it again. We make church attractive by delivering the gospel in a refreshing way, by offering a relationship with God instead of religion, which leads people to higher heights. In other words, next steps. So that living for God is no longer an obligation, it's a desire. So that's what we do. So how do we accomplish it? So once you understand who you are, this is what we do. We're a church that makes the gospel attractive so that people are taking next steps and they enjoy it. They want to be there. It's not something they endure, it's something they enjoy. How do we accomplish that? That's the second theme. Once you kind of identify who you are, and I would imagine every church, Matt, that's listening would share that same who we are. What do we do? Probably the same here to a large degree, and that is we have a group of people, dream teamers, small group leaders, staff, who help people open up their hearts to God, and they commit then to taking next steps with God because they've allowed us to take them on this journey. I call it the spiritual journey of life change. And again, here's the end goal of every person who comes to Highlands, so that they're now making a difference in living these fulfilled lives. And that's the promise. If there's a promise that we make people, is that if they'll let us take us on the spiritual journey of next steps, if they'll allow us, to basically to be their tour guide, I call it, that they're going to find this fulfilled life regardless of their circumstances. And I make this promise all of the time, that if you'll just, one of the ways I say it is give us a year of your life, do all this programming, and what you're going to discover that regardless of your circumstances, you have this sense of fulfillment because you're living what your purpose was really all about, which is making a difference.
And I think having these two rallying points during the year, and we talk about this stuff here in all staff meetings, and even amongst smaller teams, my team's 10 or 11 people, it's still stuff we're talking about weekly all the time. But to have two rallying points a year, it clears up so much. I mean, it clears up. If you're in an organization, there's probably a little bit of tension between somebody in the organization and somebody else. It clears up so much. It brings everybody back to the basics of hey, as a family, as Highlands, this is what we're about. This is who we are. The biggest thing you bring to a team is our clarity. You bring so much clarity to the team, and you finish every all staff meeting with, hey, if you guys have questions, that's the worst thing for me. So if you've got a question, ask it, and let's dial into it.
Yeah, and I do hear that all the time. Thank you. That the clarity is the best gift I've given the staff. I have so many staff that tell me that. So I want to tell you guys that are listening to the podcast today, you need to be sure to do this. And don't assume that they knew everything that I just read. So you think, well, my goodness, if they're on your team, they have to be told that? Yes, because vision and values leak.
Right.
They always have, they always will. And you make assumptions, well, they should know that. Well, why don't you say it again anyway? And say the what and the why, just having this. And then once you get into that, there's always a session, always, on our values. And we've done whole podcasts.
Right.
In fact, I think we did a 2-part podcast because there's so many values. But we cover values literally in every staff meeting. But really, if you go back to the basic 5 values that we have from day one, I have repeated these every all-staff retreat for 22 years now. And that is our physical identity of being authentic. Like we're just going to be real people. Our emotional identity of we're going to be enjoyable. We're going to have fun. And this is just a value. And we'll talk about why this is important in a second, because if somebody in our team is not having fun or not being fun, truthfully, they can't be on the team because this is who we are. So we all have to embody the values, whether we feel the values or not. It's very important. We'll come back to that in a second. But authentic, enjoyable, our intellectual identity, and I love this, is that we're relevant. So what makes people intellectually or mentally want to take this ride with us is it works on Mondays. It works on Tuesdays. That the principles, the practices, faith is not a Sunday thing. It's an all-week thing, so we're relevant. And then our social identity is that we're accepting, so anybody can come be a part of this club, if you will, this organization, this family. And then finally, the spiritual identity of we believe that God changes lives. He's powerful, authentic, enjoyable, relevant, accepting, powerful. We've literally been saying these 5 words for 22 years.
So I want to ask you to tell a story, because I know this story, but there were a lot of descriptive words that we could have used to put in those go back to when you were getting ready to launch the church. How do we even get to that point? What was the exercise that got us to those terms?
Yeah, and it's basically what we're going to do this week at our staff retreat. We were doing before we started the church, and that is sitting in a room full of people and saying, "Who are we? What are we going to do? What are we going to be known for?" And we had this thought. I think I was the one who said it, but honestly, Matt, I can't remember if I'm the one or not. But somebody said, and I think it was me, we need to look like Jesus. And I know I said, well, then what does Jesus look like? And we came up with 26 adjectives to describe Jesus that night. And now 26 is a lot of values, right? And they're all important, obviously. But we decided to hang our hat on these 5.
So good.
So out of the 26, these 5 were the most important, that Jesus was authentic. Jesus is enjoyable. I mean, kids were hanging on him. The disciples were pulling the kids off of him. So he couldn't have been as serious as Hollywood makes him. He was very enjoyable. He was relevant. He was telling everyday stories about farming and fig trees and sheep and goats. He was speaking the language of everyday people. He was accepting, so the people who weren't religious felt comfortable around him. In fact, the only people who didn't feel comfortable around him were the religious. But he was so accepting of the tax collector and the adulterer and every person who was struggling with life. He made room for them around him. And then finally, of course, he was powerful. When he laid hands on them, they got well and they got healed and they got delivered. And by the way, that's a value that I maintain has to be on everybody's list, or we're just a glorified Amway. We're just a good organization that does good things and everybody kind of benefits from it with some good values. We are more than that. We believe in the power of God to change lives. We believe miracles happen. We believe that lives can be changed by God because Jesus was that way. He wasn't just practical. He wasn't just a person with good values. He brought the power of God with him.
And because you talk about this stuff all the time, this is worked into, every single week of the year. We have culture cards that are those statements, those 26 things. We've added 26 more. We've got 52 culture cards that drive us as a staff, but also with our volunteers, our dream team. We're talking about this stuff all year long. It reminds us all the time of who we are.
Yeah, so we're talking about, staff retreat week. We're talking about how everybody can, from your family to your business to your church, can invest in your teams. And you always come back. Here's what you should have heard so far. You always come back. Who are we? What do we do? What are our values? And now we're going to put some systems around this. We're going to put some action around this. And this is where I want to help our listeners today because, of course, I'm a systems person. Your systems take everything you believe, everything that you are, and now put legs to it. It puts it into action. And this is one of the missing ingredients of churches. So they have values. They have a mission. They haven't created something that's going to deliver that. And so let me say it this way. If you want better outcomes, you need better systems. So for every church that says, well, it's not working for us, well, then we need to change the systems, not the values,
right.
Not the mission. Just what you're doing is what's not delivering it. So because systems create behaviors, behaviors become habits, habits produce outcomes.
I need you to say all of that again. That's so great. Systems
create behavior. So when you create hey, let's all do this, that creates a behavior. That's the Chick-fil-A my pleasure. Mm-hmm. So that's a system. They created a system that every time somebody says thank you, or when you hand them their bag of food, you just say my pleasure. Well, they didn't feel that. They put it into the system. Well, the system became a behavior. And pretty much you can't go to a Chick-fil-A without hearing that phrase, my pleasure, my pleasure. Behaviors create habits. Now they're doing it without thinking it, but habits produce outcomes. Everybody wants to shop there. So systems create behaviors, behaviors come habits, habits produce your outcomes, which is what everybody wants, by the way. The outcomes, the reason people listen to the GrowLeader podcast, the reason why people come to the GrowLeader conference, I think the reason why they're downloading our resources is they want better outcomes.
Right.
Everybody's looking to try to make this thing work. Goes back to our systems because they create behaviors that become habits that produce outcomes.
And I think that if you have to describe, we define the word culture, and culture is a buzzword in so many organizational settings. If you had to define culture, that's a great, great definition for culture. That systems create behaviors, behaviors become habits, habits produce outcomes. For the person listening right now, how do they get there? How do they take all of that?
It's a great question. It's a great question. And because the bottom line is, okay, if systems is driving ultimately your outcomes, then how do you create a great system? Right. And this is, again, what we will cover for 2 straight days at this staff retreat this week. We're going to talk about what do we do? What is going to be our list of my pleasures, so to speak? What are the things that we're going to commit to doing? So let me give you 3 things that if you're creating a system, that is, first of all, pastor, leader, mom, dad, business leader, whoever's listening today, you've got to make the what and the why crystal clear.
Great.
Okay, so our what and why that is crystal clear is, our what is we do church services every Sunday. Why? Because we want people to know God. We do small groups every week. Why? Because we want people in relationships where they can find freedom. We have a growth track. Why? Because we want people to discover their purpose. And then we have a dream team. Why? Because we want everybody to have the fulfillment of making a difference. Now, those are the what's and the whys. And I try to go into the feels, all the feels of that. And I always reiterate, this is what we do. And this is not up for debate. We're going to be a church that delivers on this know God, find freedom, discover purpose, make a difference. And our what's that are delivering that are our weekend services, small groups, growth track, and dream team. If every family, every business, and every church would do just that, I'm telling you, your outcomes are going to be astronomically higher just because of the clarity of the what and the why.
It's a clarifying statement because I even think you could stand up there and say, hey, we do outreach. But we don't just do outreach. We lead people to discover that outreach calling in their life, then let them do it.
Exactly.
It clarifies everything.
Exactly.
It's massive.
So then the second step to creating great systems is you've got to make the team expectations clear. So now you're talking about the people that are closest to you, whether you're a large enough church to have a staff or if you just have a volunteer team, but you can really go no further in your outcomes and in your systems until the people that are closest to you are committed to doing them as well.
Can I say something? The thing I've loved about the way you lead us is I think it's so important, senior pastors, team leaders, you always invite our spouses into the room. So every time we have an all-staff meeting, hey, your spouses are welcome to be here. And if it's something that's more, business, you'll let us know that. But more than not, you want our spouses at staff retreat. And so now the whole house, my entire house is hearing what you're saying. It's a big deal.
Well, it's really important because I'm asking a lot. I'm asking of 100% commitment from everybody because this is not a job for us. This is a calling. And we really have a mission to accomplish something together. And if I don't have the cooperation of a spouse or the rest of the family, well, then it's hard for that person to come home all excited about their job. If you went home and your wife heard all the things you're excited about and she didn't know the what and the why, she's wondering why you're so busy. But if she's in the mission and in the vision with us, then it makes it much easier.
Ownership, it's a big deal.
But we're also not only making these clear to our staff teams, and by the way, we're going to get right to our vision and values and answer the question we get asked all the time by pastors in that, what do you actually require staff to do? That's coming last, so hang in there. But we reward this, and you're a part of this.
Yep.
We reward these. Once we made these visions and values clear, we've even attached an attaboy and an attagirl to it, and even a gift card and stage recognition to 2 things that we created that I think other churches are using. And if you're not using this, you need to be sure to use it. And that is our employee core values and our employee vision expectations. We call it our ECVs and our EVEs. That we're going to reward a staff member and a team member who is embodying the core values, and we're going to reward a team member who is living out our vision expectations.
And we make it fun. I love that you trust me to help guide some of this, but I mean, we give them a honking gift card. It's not just a gift card. It's something they're like, oh man, golly, thanks so much. And it's so much fun to recognize in our organization people that you may not know super well or you know about them. It's one of the highlights of our all-staff meetings, and it'll be a highlight as we recognize sometimes 4 to 8 people at our staff retreats. We'll have a lot of recognition, whole lot of celebrating people that are doing it the right way, for sure.
Because what gets rewarded gets done.
It's great.
Let me say that again. You ought to write this down if you're listening. What gets rewarded gets done. What gets recognized gets done. And by the way, the key to a recognition is public. So it's one thing to pick up the phone or text somebody and say thank you. It's another thing.
That's awesome.
When you give them a stage shout out and you're thanking them in front of their peers, it's very, very, very important. And yes, you are a part of this. And by the way, any of the pastors or leaders that are listening to me right now who want to see this in action, we pretty much have an all-staff meeting, and this happens every month, every last Thursday of the month. Call us first before you buy a plane ticket and come here, but you are always welcome to sit in our all-staff meetings that begin at 10:30 a.m. Central. It goes to noon, so it's an hour and a half meeting. And honestly, for you just to be in the room and watch this, we welcome you. We literally have pastors at every one of our all-staff meeting anyway, so you might as well come and just join the crowd. And we would love to show you this in action because it can be, I'm teaching it. It's okay to get it taught, but it's better if it's caught.
Yeah, shoot us an email, info@growleader.com, and we'll get back to you and help you set that up.
So let's get down to the nitty-gritty now, because this is really, it's taken us, 25 minutes basically of this podcast to set all this up to what we do regularly. We're constantly talking about vision, values, and expectations. And the more you do this, and don't get your tail feathers ruffled if they forget it. That's why you have a job, okay? So just keep reminding it, because vision and values and expectations leak. But we do have a spelled out, what is love God? So we have our 4 values: love God, love people, excellence, and attitude. That's our 4 values. We want every staff member. But we literally have it spelled out. And we put it on cards that our team members have, on in their cubicle or in their office or at home somewhere where they can see it, to be reminded that, well, let me tell you what love God means.
Right.
And the point I'm trying to make, pastors and leaders, is we don't leave anything to interpretation. We make everything extremely clear. If there's a theme for this entire podcast, is clarity, clarity, clarity. Clarity of vision, clarity of values, clarity of expectations. So when we say, well, then what does love God look like? We have things, and we'll have all these in the show notes, because this is a lot of content here, but that we invite the presence of God into our daily lives. In other words, I have this expectation that if you're on this staff, that you're spending time with God every day in worship, prayer, reading His Word, and you're modeling a lifestyle of prayer by being at our prayer meetings, and not only being at them, but modeling what praying looks like when you have the church watching us, so we have an expectation of what love God looks like.
You tell us almost every month, hey, the thing that I need you to do the most is fall more and more in love with Jesus. Like there's a constant reminder all the time. I get asked about Saturday prayer. Hey, do you make people come to Saturday prayer? And there's no making. I mean, people. It's just part of our culture. It's what we do. And people ask questions like, well, what if my child has a baseball game? And you're like,
go to the baseball game.
Go to the baseball game. Like there's freedom within the system. It's not a harsh mandate. And I think that's an important piece of this as well.
Oh, absolutely. In fact, we do say it just like that. If you're able to come to the prayer service, yeah, there's an expectation for you to be there. But we don't want you to not want to be there.
Right.
Because you're, again, a paid employee of the church, too. It's like we want you to want to be there. If the question gets asked, we flip it around and say, why are you asking that question? We don't understand why going to prayer is not attractive to you. And if the answer is, because, man, my son's now playing baseball, absolutely, go be at the baseball game, because you only get that opportunity once. But again, if you don't hear anything else in the podcast, I don't think enough churches and leaders, families, moms, dads, at every level, make expectations clear enough. I mean, down to the detail. What is loving people? We have an expectation that you're writing notes, that you're walking through the crowd on a Sunday, giving people high fives, if we saw a team member on a Sunday just sitting in their seat, not spending, before the service began, and not spending time with people, we would say, wait a minute, you obviously don't realize what you're on this team to do. But I run sound. I'm just, no. Everybody, regardless of their ministry skill that they bring to the table, is still expected to embody these values.
And we one of the things we talk about all this is we believe that every single person is the GOAT at something. Like there's a gift in every person, and so we're not just trying to cherry pick the best talent from any area. We're trying to help everybody, regardless of my position on the staff team, trying to help every other person find their gifts and explore those.
And we'll put the rest of these in the show notes of our expectations in the area of excellence and joy. But I want to get to our our vision expectations, because we're running out of time. But when we talk about weekend services, we're not having the conversation with our team of whether they go to church or not. Again, if that question gets asked, do I have to come to church on Sunday? Again, to me, that brings up a greater question. So yes, we have an expectation here at the church that everybody on the team, I mean, if you're on accounting staff or you're on ministry staff, it just doesn't matter. Everybody worships one, everybody serves one. And many of our staff are coming into every service. Yep. Again, I come because I enjoy it so much. Same thing with small groups. Get asked this question literally at every GrowLeader regional we were at this year. Do you require your staff to lead small groups? And we said, well, no, we don't require it, but they all do, because this is who we are. We are a church of groups. And again, if somebody was saying, well, look, I don't know if I want to lead a small group, our question is, then why? And do we really want you on the team if you don't love or you're not doing what we're doing? Same thing with the growth track, and the dream team. And in fact, things like, showing your appreciation to our team members. We would hope that every staff member would even go into the Dream Team Central, which is basically the locker room of the Dream Team, and thanking people and just high-fiving people. We'll get all this in the show notes. I think what I want to leave our listeners with today is we're going to have a great staff retreat this week, but we're actually going to be saying the same things we've been saying for 22 years. So it's new in that I'll have speakers coming and the food's different, but the truth is we're going to talk about who we are. We're going to talk about what we do. We're going to talk about our values, and we're going to keep the expectations crystal clear by living them out ourselves. And so I'll report on our staff. Let me tell you how we're doing and how we can get better. And that's, in my opinion, what every staff retreat, family retreat, business retreat, wherever you are using this material, that's what you need to accomplish.
And I would say to founding pastors, tell the story of why God called you there. We hear about Pastor Chris as an associate pastor and moving from Baton Rouge. It's important. You got to tell the story because they don't know it the way that you know it. And I know you're tired of telling it because you've told the story so much.
I'm actually not. It probably, I've told it a lot, but what motivates and empowers the whats are the whys.
Right.
And the whys all have stories attached to them.
So great. So great. Thanks so much. This is awesome. I'm glad. Thank you for saying yes to my request.
I think it was good content. It's a lot. You asked for a lot, but we'll make sure it all gets in the show notes.
We'll put every bit of it in the show notes. We're so grateful that you're here with us. Thanks so much to our partners, Compassion International, American Family, and also Wesleyan Investment Foundation. We'll see you next time on the GrowLeader podcast.